reading things that I put down. But just going back, just for an overview of what we said we wanted to discuss is how companies, or even if it was an individual, how they would begin to take something or an idea and take it to a delivery, or put it on the shelves, if you like, and maybe work through. You've got loads of experience in that area. I've done it from a technical perspective, just for working in an organization. I don't own a product as myself, but it would be good to kind of exchange ideas and talk about what actually goes on, and some of the things, issues that people hit, and some of the things that people think about. So it's an interesting subject. So maybe kick off with, and actually, sorry, we haven't done an intro. We probably should start with an intro first. Well, look, see that we want to get straight into the subject. So my name's Jan Kodabash. I'm a technologist working for Universal e-business solutions, technology solutions. Actually, now we've renamed, and I work out of the UK, but I'm an engineer by trade, and I've worked across multiple sectors in the networking and security space. So that's a little bit about me. I'm based out in the UK, but work with clients globally. So Paul,
wonderful. Yeah, good. Hey, good morning. So currently I'm the CTO at Coinpass. We're a fintech crypto company based out of the UK, based out of London. We're as regulated as you can be for crypto in the UK. I know that's a bit of a sore topic, but that's kind of the space we play in. My background is technical product delivery. So everything from the app itself through to server infrastructure, network, and then the security layer that goes on top of it. I've been in and out of that space. Well, not in and out. I've been in that space for about 20 years now, pretty much straight out of university. So it's definitely something I really enjoy, and I really quite like that idea of bringing a product to the customer.
Okay, good. So, okay, let's go back. So we had a quick chat before, and we thought, you know what, after a few, almost an hour conversation, you know what, products to market. What have you seen? So we thought we'd share it on this. So let's start with maybe if, I guess it all starts with an idea, or someone has something that they want to deliver, or they think that's a good idea. Yeah. Now, like I said, we can look at it from an organization perspective, but that idea concept, when it starts, let's talk a little bit about what that actually is. Sometimes people, and it could be a product, I'm assuming, or it could be a solution itself. How is that from your perspective? Is that how you always look at it? First, look at, what does someone bring that to you, or even if you've developed it yourself, is that where you would start and start to ask questions?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a good place. That's where I would start. I mean, for myself, I'm not a salesy person. So for me, I very much gravitate towards a solution that solves a problem or a need, or even something that improves X. And that's the most logical place for me to start, because that's kind of with my engineering background, that makes a lot of sense. I think the most difficult part about that, though, is whenever you come up with a new idea, or someone brings you a new idea, it's normally like 90% excitement, 10% about what the actual idea is. And I think that 90% excitement is the most difficult part to deal with, because it's so easy to like, I want a solution that does X, but now 1 hour into the conversation, it now does A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and you're not going to bring that to market. That's just not. I mean, there's some companies that do, but most people don't have an unlimited budget, right, to bring something of that magnitude to market. So I think for me, always the most difficult part about every time we've come up with a new product at the various companies I've been at or a new solution, it's dealing with more for lack of a better term, I like to say the nerdy excitement. Like I get quite nerdy about building new things, and it can be very easy to get carried away and just want to do everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess in this industry of product development, there's kind of like specific names of, you know, viable product, but you mentioned there that you know, you get nerdy about, and that's the thing. It's important, I think, there to say you've kind of, if you're able to step back and see, is this product or this idea very personal to me, you know, and that's why I'm getting excited, or are you very much a customer focused person? And you know, I think this is going to be a lot of value to customers. Being able to step out, that's quite important when you're at that stage, being able to separate those two things, and you know, try and disassociate yourself with the product. Do you think that's important? Because sometimes people build products because that's what they like doing, so it is personal.
Yeah.
I also feel that ultimately, I mean, for me, it's a little bit different. I don't really get that personal about the problem, the solution, until, you know, after I see it working for people, and I think, oh, that's really good. Yeah. I don't really get that excited, but then others do, don't they? They look at it and they think, you know what, this is. So I think that's important, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. I think the big difference with that is if you're the customer as well. Like I totally get where you're coming from. I've definitely built products for customers or built solutions for customers, and it's like, you know, obviously love the area of work we're in, but you know, I've got no sort of skin in the game of other than doing a good job about the solution. So, and I think when you are also a customer of the potential solution, I think that also is where a lot of that nerdy excitement comes from. Like when we were first when we built the first product for OUTL Coinpass. I mean, it wasn't called OUTL Coinpass at the time, but when we built the first product for that company, we just wanted to build the most simple broker interface to allow people to get their pounds into crypto, because it was not the most simple thing in the UK. And in that case, I was a customer because I was trying to buy Bitcoin, and I, at the time, I was sending. I created an account with a company called Kraken, you know, very well known company in the space, but they didn't have a UK presence. So I was doing from my Barclays bank account, I was sending money to their bank account in Germany, and then waiting for it to arrive on their platform, and then it would arrive in euros, and then I could use the euros to buy Bitcoin, and which was great because it was a product I needed, or a product I wanted, I should say, and but there had to be a better way, right? And that's what we did with OUTL Coinpass. We built just a very simple broker style platform that serviced me as a customer, but also many other people that were having a similar problem. So I think in that scenario, it was much easier to get excited about the solution because I was also a customer, or a would-be customer of wanting that kind of service.
So that's interesting. I mean, you went from a kind of customer to actually building something that delivered a problem you were having. So you kind of had it like a personal issue in terms of, you know, you saw a functional problem for yourself. So that next phase to kind of understand if other people were having the problem, which really drove the next phase of actually maybe we need to solve this. But just talk a little bit more about you kind of saw the problem. How did you expand that to see, well, is everyone else having the same problem?
Yeah,
and Coinbase, that must have been really key for Coinbase as well. Looking at that, what did that involve? Because I guess that really drove you to the next phase.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I can't really take a lot of credit for that part of it because it was very much, this was 2017. It was anyone who put $100 into crypto, almost anyone that put $100 into crypto made a bit of money, right? A bit of beer money. So I don't think it was. I jumped on that hype as well. And I didn't realize how difficult that was. Like what I was doing to get the money from my bank account to Germany to think, for me, that didn't seem like a big deal because I'd worked for companies, I'd worked with foreign payments across borders, I'd worked with foreign entities, worked in international organizations. So that seemed all relatively normal for me. I appreciate that's not everyone's commercial or corporate experience. So I didn't see it as a huge problem. But then, you know, you're having conversations with friends and colleagues, and you're like, well, actually, this is actually maybe a bigger problem than I thought. And then as I started to meet more people and also the crypto community, especially in 2017, was quite small for terms of people that are actually quite serious about it. I started to see actually this is actually a bigger problem than I realized. And it was only through that sort of networking and meeting people that I realized that, hang on, if I take actually step out of this and see that I can actually solve a problem for myself and for many other people. And that really kind of I fell into by accident, because that wasn't what I was looking for. I was just trying to figure out a way to solve the problem for myself.
Yeah. So you said that you spoke to, excuse me, a lot of friends, colleagues. I guess we did something very similar in the organization is looking at, and I call them friendly clients. If you imagine from an organization, you've already got a client base if you are serving some type of solution. And they're probably the go-to people just to kind of test an idea, to say, what do you think of this? You get a lot of feedback from there. And so I think the mix of both also is quite important, having those meetings and seeing what their problems are. Now, if what we did was we kind of evaluated if everyone was coming back with the same pain point, if you like, yeah. And if enough of them were coming back with that same pain point, we kind of thought, okay, well, do you know what? We may be onto something here. So that kind of drove it for the next phase. It wasn't really a kind of, we weren't in the space to actually just test it. We wanted to get some really good feedback before, you know, we could get some investment for it. So yeah, that's you know, spreading it and finding out who it's affecting and if they've got the same problem as that you've seen is key. What about I mean, if you were to go back there now, I mean, we'll jump on quickly to the next phase because I think it's really important. This part is what other. I mean, I was thinking. I mean, we work with a lot of solutions now, you know, and we talk to people and we talk to clients that we have, because that's, like you say, clients are the most important part of this. And if you're solving their problems, I think, you know, that's the drive for me. But what about surveys and going on to, like, for example, if there was someone here who didn't have any clients, you know, communities and things like that. Because I guess people are a bit scared of actually talking too much about their product because they're a bit protective initially. But that could be a way for them, I'm guessing. Is there any other thing if someone was maybe didn't have that community? How else could they test their idea in terms of if there's a problem there?
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's an interesting one. I think the surveys are actually quite a good idea. I mean, even to this day, I mean, I don't take credit for it, but I know our marketing PR team still survey our customers, and I mean, I feel like we're in a very over-surveyed culture. Don't get me wrong, but I think if you could survey the right people that are passionate about the problem, as opposed to give me 5 stars because you liked my widget I bought from a particular e-commerce platform, right? I think that's a bit different, but I think if you can survey the people that you think they've got that problem. But I think an interesting point you made was about, and I meet a ton of startup entrepreneurs, and I love meeting people in that space because it's just, they're some of the most excitable people and the most interesting people you ever meet. And I think you can't be scared about telling people you've got a product or that you want to build a product, even if you don't have a product. Like, there are so many, it doesn't matter whether who you tell, you've got, and if someone steals your idea, someone's going to steal your idea. And so you just need to get over that. Like, you know, we at the end of the day, we need more than one of everything, right? You know, people didn't stop building rideshare apps because Uber rose to prominence, right? Lyft still come out, and there's still constantly more ride sharing apps come out. So you can't be worried about telling people that you're trying to build a product because you're worried about someone stealing your idea. That's just got to slow you down. People will copy you. So take it as a compliment more than anything. But I think finding a community of people and incentivizing them to give you some feedback if it's not a community you have native exposure to. I think I think gift cards are quite an interesting one. If you say to someone, I even see it at trade shows, people like, I'll give you $100 Amazon voucher or £100 Amazon voucher to complete this, or go in the draw to win this to give me a survey. And I think some people like, I couldn't be bothered, but some people like, I'll give up 5 minutes of my time for a chance to win $100. So I think you get that in front of enough people, you're going to get some feedback. But it's more what you really are looking for are the nuggets of information you're not thinking of. And you'll know it's one of those nuggets of information when you are reading that feedback and you're like, I didn't think about that. Like something we often say in the company is, I don't know what I don't know, and that bothers me. So how can I find out what I don't know? So, and I think most entrepreneurs are open to that. So I think that's a skill they need to learn, but it's being open to that through the feedback and figure out what customers want. Because you may say, I want a product that does X, Y, and Z, and you think it's fantastic, it's going to solve your problem, and then you do a week of research or 2 months of research or whatever, and you're like, if I need to tweak that by 10% for it actually to be commercially viable, or actually what I want is going to solve my problem but no one else's. So I think that feedback loop is really important.
Okay. That's an interesting one. Yeah. Being protective, I guess. I do agree there totally that just kind of spreading the word or sharing is the best concept. But
sorry, one more thing I wanted to add too. It's a little bit, it's not for everyone, but a little bit of something that I've used quite a bit in the past, both in my e-commerce background and where I'm at now, is reading the reviews of your competitors or people in the space, but just going straight to the 1-star. Like, what are they doing wrong? Like, can you do, like, for example, I made the comment about sending the money to Germany. Obviously that's a pain point, but if I had gone to that web, and I'm not saying I did, but if I had gone to that company's Facebook page or social media and said, what if I was able to solve the banking problem, what else are they doing right or wrong based on the feedback that their customers are giving them? And I sometimes find you can get some really good nuggets of information of what someone else is doing wrong or have overlooked to especially if they're a competitor in your space.
Right. Okay. Interesting. How long, and I'm not sure you can put a time to this, but how long did you guys did you spend in that discovery phase? What did that take you? I'm not saying you stopped, but what the initial part before you said, okay, now let's kind of, because that's what we'll talk about next is the defining of that information and what went on. But how long did that period take?
For us, it was probably, I would say it was easy, a few months, 2 or 3 months. And the discovery for us was not necessarily, so it was probably like 4 weeks of like how to figure out what the product would, and then 2 months of like, how do you deliver something like that? Because it was a financial service product. There's a lot of extra stuff that we had to think about. And that ended up taking most of that sort of discovery time, because just trying to bring something in a regulated world that we live in, and at that time it was an unregulated product that really sort of took up a lot of our discovery time up. Like, just as an example, we had the first mock-ups within sort of 3 or 4 weeks of what we wanted our product to look like. But just opening up a company bank account took us 6 months because banks in the UK didn't want to deal with crypto. So our CEO at the time, one of the founders, he got knocked back by 32 banks trying to open up a bank account. So like it was those sort of things that really like slowed our launch down, as opposed to actually coding up the product.
Yeah. So, and I guess that differs for me. I'm quite lucky where we work. It's probably about 2 or 3 people we can have a conversation and look at an idea, and someone will come up. We say, look, this customer's having this problem, and you know what? And someone else will say, okay, well, let's investigate a bit further. Yeah, so we can be a little bit more agile in terms of, but I guess in larger organizations, they need a lot. So I guess it differs in different places in terms of the time you spend, and I guess on what you want to do next. But if we go on to that next part, I'm guessing you've got now to the stage where you took 2 months in kind of evaluating if that so you had a solution to solve, or you had a problem to solve, sorry, and you thought it was key enough to take to more. Did you go straight into like the mock-up, as you say, or just one step before the mock-up? What did that look like? Was that just a couple of meetings with, your CEO or certain guys and said, actually, yeah, let's do this. We've had enough feedback now. What did that look like? A week?
Yeah.
Or, do it.
Yeah. I mean, it was, we would talk a lot. We'd have micro conversations, 4 or 5 times a week. We had a couple of like proper formal meetings to, sort of go over some mock-ups. But then it just very quickly become 5-10 minute meetings, 5-minute chats. Like as we work through, we very quickly hired the first member of the tech team as well to join me to start building out that first product. So a lot of those conversations were like feedback. It's like, actually, this is not going to work in the mock-up, or we need to change this in the mock-up. And it was I think the CEO still has the original mock-up that we did in the pub in Clapham all those years ago, but definitely didn't look like that within a few weeks. We very quickly changed that and got some more. So we'd obviously spent a lot of time getting the customer feedback, but then as we started working one-on-one with the developer, it's like, oh, actually, we want to do this or we want to do that, and then we had to hire a third person in that was like a very specialist UI guy, and then sort of well, maybe we move this button or do this just to make that customer journey a bit better. So very, very quickly it evolved away from what we had decided. But I suppose I've kind of gone a bit complete tangent from your question, but it was it evolved so much. Yeah.
A pub in Camden was the Coinpass office.
I mean, I still smile every time I walk past that pub. So
yeah. So I mean, I guess you were fortunate. You had a few people. You had a few people in there, and you kind of started just looking at that. With some people don't have access to that kind of I guess community of people that they can bounce ideas off. What would they do? I mean, I don't think I'm just trying to think now if people have like working groups that they could go to and say, look, I've got this idea. I mean, I suppose banks do offer like that type of facility where they can feel safe and actually knock some ideas about before. I mean, you had a good organization around you. Can I ask, did cost come into it? Like, look, we don't want to spend too much time on this, and this is the budget we've got.
No, absolutely. Our initial seed funding was not unlimited. It was actually quite small. So very much this is we were very cost conscious very early on. And then we did a second seed funding round with just before our launch, I think. So it was you never have enough money for a launch, I don't think. But it was
kind of start defining, what you've been talking about and discovered. Was there, because obviously it's going to take time, it's going to take effort.
Yeah, there was some budgeting, but most of the budgeting was allocated to basically AWS and technical resources,
Right.
as opposed to anything else. There was, the rest of it was kind of people's time, and put into sort of figuring it out to try to keep that budget low.
Yeah, I mean, I've always thought that. So in that situation, if I was someone who was, and look, you've already defined that or understood that there's a need there, and there's customers. It's important to know that you're either solving a solution, but then maybe as part of that initial phase, that discovery phase, I'm looking at it from someone who doesn't have that network of people. Maybe they can, as part of that discovery phase, they approach those people and say, look, do you know what, we're doing this. Would you help fund part of it? Yeah. And, I'll work with you to kind of develop this. Like I'll work for free, but we'll be developing this. You kind of fund it. That's possibly an option. But that defining phase of seeing, okay, the idea is good. A lot of feedback. We've got a lot of repetitive customers who have had the same problem, and that work that you're doing, you went to AWS, you started building out straight away on that. But maybe some people don't have that option. They should maybe lean on, because you're still not there yet. You're still defining what it is, and maybe actually, Paul, when you started talking about this, did you focus, like you had an idea so that initially to rule the world, but did you decide on specific steps first? You said, look, we're going to tackle this in that second phase, that definition. Did you say, look, let's just do this first as our? Were you able to break it down like that, or did you kind of just, look, we're just going all
out? No, we did break it down. We decided on what our MVP was. And we were like, let's just build because we wanted to get to market as quick as possible. We knew there wasn't an unlimited.
Was there a reason for that, or was it just needed to just put something out there because?
There was a few reasons. We just kind of felt like it wasn't real until it went live, right? So I think there was sort of that side of it, but also like crypto was hot in 2018. We wanted to strike while the iron was hot. Who knows until when another company is going to come and do what we're trying to do. And ironically, the month before we launched, a big US company that does the exact same thing as us launched. So they beat us to the UK market by 5 weeks, but that's okay. There's enough space for everyone. But we wanted to get there as quick as possible. Also, we wanted to start generating some revenue and getting that feedback via revenue, as opposed to just feedback by conversations. And we were very open with paying customers, like what did they like and what didn't they like, just so that we could work on what the next phase is. And so the planning we actually had for phase 1, 2, 3, 4, phase N actually completely changed after we launched, because customers very quickly fed back about what they did and didn't like. And
right.
And that was quite humbling. It's also it kind of knocked us down a peg, but in a good way. Like, it's like, okay, we need, at the end of the day, we're not building this for us, we're building this for our customer. So if our customer wants that, then let's do that, even if that's what we don't think is the best thing for them. Assuming it's secure and it's above the law, of course, let's build what they want. And that's kind of when that sort of pivoted sort of the later or the next iterations of the product.
Yeah, I mean, I had it written down here. Validate from the customer is always a good start point. They provide the best feedback. Like I said, I kind of don't make it too personal. I think sometimes the product, until I see someone really liking it and using it, and like you say, you'll get a lot of feedback, and maybe the next phase of that product, widget or capability comes from an idea that that's a great framework to have, or feedback cycle, because you can keep driving it further. But one of the things there that you said is that feedback, and I know I keep kind of, because I try to understand a little bit of how it works. This is new for you guys. You just built. Did you have people that were? Did you by this time have someone driving the product, like a product owner? Was he feeding that back? What was that? Was it just people
the product owner?
Sorry, I'm just saying, because some people directly to clients, maybe the salespeople were doing. Who was that feedback coming from?
It was coming from our service desk. So we had a Zendesk widget inside the app. At this point too, we were only web only. So we had a Zendesk widget inside of our app, and also you could email our support team. And we didn't have any support agents. That was just picked up by someone in the team. Whoever was free at the time would pick up the support ticket and answer it. But that was very much driving feedback from customers, because it would, like an example is so we very much come up with a philosophy based on this customer feedback very early on. So customer deposits their funds, and then we took them through all these beautifully designed nice screens to go and buy some Bitcoin, and this is now what's going to happen to your Bitcoin, and this is how it's going to be stored, and that just frustrated customers. So we then very quickly come up with this philosophy. Is our goal was to have a customer start and leave our platform within 20 seconds. And they had to have their entire customer experience finished in less than 20 seconds. And as soon as we started approaching that, as our revenue went up. So we were trying to keep customers off our platform, whereas I suppose a lot of companies are trying to increase the time. But the reason for that was that if you could do what you needed to do in 4 seconds as opposed to 20 seconds, that was much better for customer retention, as opposed to just trying to. And we were over explaining so many things to our customers, because we were excited about the space. They just don't care. Just give me what I'm paying for. Don't over explain it to me, which that was an interesting bit of feedback as well.
Right. So getting people on the platform. But when you said also about service desk, that's you had a service desk. Most technology companies have a support team or service desk. I wonder, because we do it a lot. We talk to our service desk a lot, and I get a lot of feedback from there, just general. But I'm not so sure how many people see that as a real wealth of knowledge for how well you're doing. It doesn't matter, I guess, if you're reselling someone's product, but being in line with that service desk, like you're saying there, is really valuable if you do have that, because you can get so much information about how your products are doing, especially if you've got a tool that can give you some insights into this product's been failing a lot, and someone analyzing. I think some places have a service desk, they just use it to solve problems, but they actually don't look at it periodically and analyze why are we having so many problems with this, and let's have a look here, because it's obviously a customer problem. This is the highest rate issue ticket we've got, and it's constantly the same. I mean, there's a problem straight away, isn't it, for some people?
Yeah.
Why don't you fix that problem? Because everyone's having it. So yeah, it's interesting you say, from the service desk rather than maybe just feedback from your sales team. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we sort of fast forward 5-6 years from now, the service team is such an important part of our business. We have a dedicated service team these days, but constantly checking in with the service team and finding out what our customers are saying. But a lot of it now is how to make improvements, like incremental improvements. I'll sit there and look at some analytics with the head of our support team, and it's like, okay, we had 100 customers ask this question, or 100 customers do this process. It's like, could we have actually made that process easier for them or better? Or is there some way we could sort of self-service that? like I've been to quite a lot of industry events and awards nights and sat in tables with our corporate customers, which is awesome, because a lot of them rave about how awesome our support team is and how friendly our service desk is. And we're still very much trying, and it's very difficult as you get bigger, but trying to hold on to that sort of personal touch with the service desk team. But they all say, hey, I had this problem, but your team like was fantastic. Which is great to hear. But then there's a lot of these things that's like customer wants a level of reporting because they need to give to their accountant, right? No one, if you're not an accountant, you probably don't want to fuss around trying to figure out what your tax implications are for crypto, right? But we had started generating new reports that customers could pull down from the platform just to make that experience going to their accountant a bit easier. And it's something that is not in our wheelhouse and not what we do, but our customers want a better experience, and we want to make their journey much easier. So we just added that in and just give that sort of feedback. Because also now, like versus where we were 5 years ago to now, it's an ultra competitive landscape. So like, service and ease of use, I think is becoming more the defining characteristics as opposed to brand loyalty. But I just felt the service desk team is, not everything, especially not everything that comes through is obviously actionable or you're going to do, but it's just taking the time to sort of filter that out. And in the early days, we didn't have a product owner to do that. We do now, which is great. But it's what I'd say to anyone starting out, like that's a really good bit of feedback if you can get it from your customer.
Yeah.
But obviously sense check it, because sometimes customers are just frustrated as well.
Yeah, the service desks themselves and enabling them. Although we've managed to, and I think it's really important for me when I've ever delivered a solution that's gone to market or gone live, I work very closely with service desk or our first line support, if you like. However, I always like it that there's not too much triage in terms of when a problem comes in. And I kind of always rave on about, look, do you know what? You're only one step away from the team that I work with, who are the designers of this and who are the delivery of this. You're going to get someone who's been equipped to tackle the problem. But if he can't tackle the problem, you can straight away bypass anything and go to it. I think that's important. I can't, I can understand also maybe that brings its own implications as well for really big organizations. But there's nothing worse than sitting on there, because a lot of people are tech savvy now and they kind of know what they want to fix. So they're coming on the call and they say, look, I just want to fix this part. But if they're having to go through some questions about, basic things and until they get seen, that can be really frustrating from that. But I'm just talking about service desk. We kind of deviated. But one of the things you there is in that definition stage also is keeping an eye on, I call it like ancillary type problems. So you've delivered a solution or a technology solution that's geared to, say, an engineering team or client or user base. But like you said, there are, for example, regulatory requirements that other people, the accountant of the company is having a problem with. That's really important as well, you're acknowledging it first and actually being able to fix that for them. Those things that people are not interested in. Look, we just want to buy, Bitcoin and we just want to get our money. It's important in that phase to take and acknowledge those, ancillary pain points that are not, direct feature. Okay, I think we kind of maybe we've kind of touched on a little bit the development of now. So you've got that feedback, and I think we skipped a little bit. But say, for example, what did that involve, the actual development? I know you went to AWS. How did that? Because you've not taken it to market yet. You've actually in that development phase. You talked about hiring people. Some people don't have that, but just tell us a little bit about how you went about developing it and prototype maybe?
Yeah, no, good question. So with our prototype, we were very much trying to get to market as quick as possible. Just like I said, we wanted to validate our product and bring in some revenue. So we made the decision to hire. I appreciate not everyone is in that position, but we hired our first person, and then not long after, our second person, and the three of us just worked on the prototype. So and then at one point we actually ended up bringing a CEO in as well, and then he spent a lot of time working with the UI designer, and they would just spend all day just like looking at screens and trying to figure out better way to make this pixel look better on here and pixel, and then myself and the other engineer would just build the back end and the front end, but very heavily relying on them. Like yeah, so that prototype was rough. and I think by the time we actually launched, we'd expanded the team again to another person. And I mean, our prototype crashed our whole platform crashed the day before we launched as well. I remember being up till like 2 o'clock in the morning. We had a press announcement the next day at an event that we got invited to, and we were using that event as our launching announcement. And I'm at 2 o'clock in the morning at the hotel with one of the engineers trying to debug the problem, which was is an experience. But you know, I think that's some of the fun things to look back now on anyway. So yeah, I think coming back to the prototype, for me, I was quite technology agnostic. I didn't really mind what technology stack we used. I wanted to use what was going to get us the quickest, what was going to be the best for our customer. And we very quickly jumped on board with AWS because they had a startup program. So I know they have something around it now, but at the time you get $100,000 worth of AWS credits for being a startup, which is huge, because AWS is an awesome platform, but it can be quite a big chunk of most companies' tech budget. So so having that as a platform to start, I can't say we would have launched without it, because we didn't have the budget to pay AWS every month. That's for sure. The only budget I had, I was putting into paying engineers. So yeah, the early on we built it. We built our back end and front end at the time I think it was one app. Front end and back end was all one application. We built it in AWS and we launched. It was a bit clunky. I think we ended up breaking it as soon as we had like 200 concurrent users, but it at least got us something very, very early on.
So yours, I want to touch on this a little bit, that testing phase, because I think that for me, you build it, how you actually test it, and that doesn't necessarily mean just an application that's web-based and that people, public people use. You might have something that you've got third-party clients, private and trusted customers use. How do you test it? How do you test a public application? I know just this could be anything. What would you do to kind of do that? How did you guys go about saying, look, just go and test this? It's like beta. You don't have any customer base initially. How did you do that? I mean, I know some specifically that I've used previously to test in-house applications, which could be used, from a public. What did you guys do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some awesome tools to do it now, and but they're not cheap. I think, but early on we didn't have any of the budget to do that, so we just sat in front of a screen and just clicked buttons, as simple as that. So like, we'd be like, okay, what's the user journey to go for an onboarding process? But okay, this is what we'd expect the user journey, but what do you think all the quote silly things a customer could do during an onboarding journey, or where are bottlenecks during our journey that someone could get confused, or some ambiguity, and let's test those sort of things. Like, and it's same things like, uploading the wrong document, clicking the wrong button, bashing a button 10 times. It was super like simple, so time it took us so much time, but we didn't have money to buy the tool or to pay for a tool. So
I think, and this is the thing, if people out there who are trying to achieve this, they can always go to like a third party, and kind of another thing, to kind of ask them to work with them to say, look, I just need something tested. Again, they may be a bit too protective around it, but there are people that they can go to, solution providers, integrators, they can go to say, look, all I want is this app to be tested, almost like a pen test. And I'm going to come on to security for that as well, from your one regulatory, but they could do that. And I think it's really worthwhile, as long as when they're doing that, you predefine what your metrics and measurement metrics are, because that's really important, rather than just go and flood it. A lot of people look at it from, just flood it, but the feedback's not there in terms of, the user experience. Like you said, that's really important. That's more like specific or granular level, but then you also need the volume part in as well. I mean, for example, did you get targeted users, for example, I don't know, I'm not saying all grandmothers can't use tech, but I'm just saying someone who's never used tech, like your granny, and say, look, try and buy, Bitcoin on this. But I mean, did you go to that level?
We didn't go to that level, but we did sort of target traders. We'd met some people along the way, especially through product discovery, and they were more than happy to jump in and test it out. I think for them it was a great novelty to sort of see what a new product was live. Right. And then we had a Google Doc that they had access to, and if any of them did any testing in their spare time, write some comments, tell us what they did, and then some of it was actionable, some of it was not, but at least it was another set of eyes and trying to figure out, because it's very easy to get like tunnel vision when you're building a product, and it's so nice to have that external input, because that's going to show you everything outside of your tunnel vision. So I think a lot of that ended up driving changes for future releases, or at least brought up discussions about what we could do, but also gave us that sort of another tick of approval that it's like, okay, cool, we've had some other people test this now, and they're happy with it, and we were quite lucky that you could take them out for dinner or a drink, and that was enough. They didn't cost us the earth, so that was quite nice. But I think it's funny you say thing about the grandmother comment, or the we're always we always have this.
Grandmothers out there, if any grandmother here, you may be tech, maybe it's just mine, who's not technical.
No, I mean it's it's an interesting one, because it's like we always have, we quite often talk about like, how do we attract customers that don't sort of fit the normal mold of what our atypical customers are, and is the way to attract them better marketing? Is it better user experience? Is it creating the interface in a way that better suits them? So it's definitely conversations we quite often have about, there's no point building an interface that you have to have a technical degree to use. It needs to be something that everyone can use to an extent. I appreciate when your companies like Walmart and things like that, or Amazon. Okay, I think they're intuitive, but they're also like can be quite complicated as well. So, but then that just comes with their sheer size. When you're quite small, or a very niche sort of product category, I think you can get away with keeping it simple as possible. And we if someone wanted to put a new button on our platform, well, I was the button police. Like, why? Like, why does a customer need to click another button right now? Oh, but and if there was not a good reason, we didn't add a new button in, because I was so against, like, and as executive team was as well, we were so against like adding additional complexity into something that didn't need to be complex. And right. And I think that's very difficult to do, because people want to put people want to change it and add more features, but also still bring value, and don't make things too complicated. And I think overcomplicating it is such an easy thing to do.
So actually, there's two parts and questions I've got here at this phase. So we're still in the kind of definition phase. We haven't actually delivered anything at this point. But from your testing, because sometimes you kind of already now built a prototype, and from an engineering perspective, you're just testing functionality. And sometimes, like you say, you can get tunnel vision to just test this functionality work. But at the same time, the usability, the user experience, nowadays there's a term, customer success manager, to make sure that they're all, customers happy. But that is really important, because you can get lost, can't you, in terms of just trying to make sure it's functional, because you built that prototype and it's kind of stayed there now, and you're not developing anymore. You just want it to do what it's supposed to do that you've agreed to. You may lose sight of the use. So, how do you, and you've got measure, you measured through Google Docs. How much time did you go back while you were doing these parallel testings? Did you go back and everyone actually sit down and look at how we're being measured? What's the feedback? Because at this phase, I'm guessing it was very chaotic. You've got a date, you want to go live, you're testing this. How did that work?
Yeah, chaotic is a good way to put it. We did end up, we spent a lot of time, to answer your question, we spent a lot of time just continuously rechecking the feedback loop. And it did get to a point, it's like, okay, and we had a very, so September 1st, 2018 was our go live date, 1 p.m. So we couldn't miss that date, because that was when we were on stage at this event, this conference, launching. So it got to a point, especially 2 or 3 weeks out, it's like, well, hang on, I can't build that and test that and have that ready for that date.
Yeah.
So what's the compromise? And whether the compromise was we disabled something, or normally if we, instead of disabling something, we would just hide it from the customer, and then come back and we'd reiterate that and then re-enable that again, that feature for the customer. So there was definitely a mix. It's like, what can we get done in the feedback loop by September 1st, and what needs to be the week after that, and how do we go from there? Because at the end of the day, for that September 1st launch, the most critical thing was we had to be able to sign people up. People might not trade the first day, because we've got documents and compliance and all those sort of things that you have to go through. So we could, the first few hours, it's fine if we can't trade, but we need to be able to onboard customers day one and be trading, being able to allow customers to trade very, very quickly after that. So, and if something didn't fit into, if the feedback didn't impact that, then it went off to like a phase 2, phase 3 release. And we ended up releasing, phase 2, I think was in like 7 or 8 days after one. And we very much got into a cycle of reiterating very quickly and very frequently, like small updates, as we sort of filtered and started going back and re-reviewing that feedback we've got pre that September launch.
Yeah, I think it is chaotic, because like you said, you've now also set a date, and everyone's pushing to kind of get through. This is where, like you say, I'm glad you mentioned it, is where the compromises come in. And it's hard to do, to kind of say, look, let's stop and just, we're not going to be able to do this. But I think that's the logical thing to do, and a clever thing to do. As long as, for me, whenever we're building something, we don't have probably a program manager. It's more engineering focused. Our engineers are very program or solution aligned, if you like. Yeah. So even though there's engineering, but keeping that initial message going all the way back now, having that message, for me anyway, of why we're doing it, and what's that benefit for them, will kind of drive what the compromise is. If you keep having that, almost like a mission statement, we're delivering this because it's going to solve this problem. Yeah. But just that kind of motivates me a little bit more. We're doing this because of this. I know the compromises we'll have to make, but like you said, maybe just removing a feature, still having it in the back pocket. That's I suppose that's where people can lose motivation, because they think, oh, you're taking this away, and it's not going to do what I think it's going to, because everyone wants to deliver everything. And that's, I guess you've got other people involved now. You've got people like marketing involved in saying, look, we've got the customers. We said we're going to give it to them already. You've got to accept that there's going to be compromise, as long as, again, you go back and the customer ultimately is going to get what they want. Yeah. And you can communicate that. Again, communication is a big part of it, isn't it? If you can communicate your message of what you're going to deliver, and why not? I mean, I think sometimes people, and you've seen it now in the industry, when large companies make mistakes, and they just don't come out and say, do you know what, we can't do this, and we're going to try and do this, but they kind of hide it all the time. So, no, I think that measurement part is key. But so it's a critical. I've circled here compromise. That phase where you're defining that compromise is important.
And I don't think the compromise ever stops either. Like, and we released a new product in January, and it was like a brand new app, completely different to what we've done before. And okay, obviously we have a big team now, and we're more of a corporate now, but there was still a lot of compromise. It's like we were given the date of the 10th of January to sort of line up with some other like corporate initiatives. And I'm like, well, you can't have like half of what you want. And most of it, unfortunately, was like tracking and stuff for like, not tracking, that sounds horrible. Things like the marketing team would want this SDK so that we can, like Google Tag Manager, for example, so we can, track customer onboarding, and we want to be able to do push notifications and things like, if you guys want to hit the 10th of January, this is what we can have. The 17th of January, this is what you can have, and this is what you can have each week after that. And so, oh, okay, cool. So which was fine. That worked out quite well, because they just tiered the PR and marketing accordingly. But I even find now compromise is still part of the product life cycle. It's not just the day one.
Again, you probably had key people by that time when you were defining the product, who could probably map out a roadmap. And if you do have the option of doing that at that stage, that probably allows you to have less of the compromises and see them say, look, you know what, this is what we were going to try and be realistic. If you've got someone maybe with experience there to kind of look at it and say, we're not going to hit this, I can see what the problems are. It's always good to have that person there who can see straight away what the problems are, where the problem areas are. One thing I probably over the years am able to do now, for me anyway, not saying for any problem, but straight away I start looking at, okay, I can see where these problems are, and those are the areas I kind of focus on. Look, what's realistic here, and once you can smooth that out, that makes it I guess less compromise afterwards. But I'm also conscious of the time. Look, I know we'd overrun, but we just get to the delivery. Put it out, and you said the day before you were kind of bashing at the keyboard. How did that, or maybe just before? What was that like, or what did you have to do?
I'm trying to remember what it was. It was definitely something to do with an onboarding. Something to do with our onboarding was not working properly, and I almost want to say it was something silly like the email server. There's something wrong with the email server. Was not working, and at that stage I think we were using Google Mail, but it wasn't Google. It was something that we configured wrong. So our backend server was not sending out the onboarding emails, but there was also like your one-time code, like to pipe this code in to proceed. Well, people couldn't proceed because they weren't getting the emails. So we did like a final round of testing on the Friday afternoon, before the event on the Saturday, and it's like, why is that not working? And then I pinged one of the guys, said, yeah, not a problem. I'll look at it later on. Probably just something very simple. And then we realized like about 8, 9 o'clock, it's like, no, there's something wrong, fundamentally wrong with something. And we found it and fixed it by 2 a.m. So it was a little scary, but I think the CEO was more scared than I was, because I could see that we were making some progress to find the issue, where he was freaking out that it's like, can I do anything? It's like, no, just go grab me a coffee. Because like right now, I it's going to be a long night and I need some caffeine. And that was probably not the right thing to say to him, because I think that freaked him out worse. But you know what? It was just, we just had to, myself and Bill just worked through it until we found the problem, and he fixed it, which was great. We pushed, we did a couple more tests, great, went to bed, woke up in the morning, did a run through with the CEO. We're good. No one touch it. And but it was super satisfying. Like that afternoon when we had, I think we had 30 or 40 signups within the first hour of launch, which was just mind-boggling to us, which was fantastic. And everything was working. There was no complaints. So it worked out in the end.
And also, so as part of that delivery, obviously people are signing up, people are paying. And maybe I should have asked this before, but from a cost perspective, who was involved in and how did you kind of, at a high level work out, are we, cost efficient, cost effective for this product? How did that come about? Did you, break each component down? What's involved in the cost structure?
Yeah.
Did you have much to do with that?
Yeah, I need a little bit. Like I was more from a product research point of view. I mean, our business model was quite simple, which maybe helped as well. So we were a volume-based business. So if you buy a Bitcoin or sell a Bitcoin, you're not buying it or selling it from us. We're going to put that onto a market somewhere, or we're going to match it with an internal user. Obviously, day one, we weren't matching it with any users, internal users. We were then feeding it out to a market or to another broker. And then we just take a fee in between. So the most important thing is that matching takes place, and then we can take our fee. So that's right. The primary way we make revenue. So we don't make any revenue if you sign up. We only make a revenue when you start actually trading. So we do have we do make a small, the ever so slightly bit of revenue when you remove money from the platform, but that's more to cover like blockchain fees. But the 99% of our revenue comes from that sort of transaction volume.
Yeah, I think that's important, is actually looking at, I think definitely you've got work. I mean, it's just basics, work out a costing, and looking at how much it's going to cost you to deliver. But then the volume matters a lot as well. If you're expecting a big sign up volume, that's going to affect it. Sometimes also kind of if you provide it as a complementary service to something else that you've got as well. Often people don't like to look at if they've got a product and building it alongside an already product on the shelf. Even in technology, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got completely provide it as a separate service and different cost structure. Aligning it to an existing product set initially might work, but people may not have accounting teams or business development teams to work out a cost structure. That can be quite difficult to do. People come up with costs because, again, they would personalize that product and think this is what it's worthwhile for me, especially if there's nothing on the market at the moment to compare it to. I think for me, always look at from a customer perspective and the value it's going to bring them. Once you've got that, not to kind of penalize them because, look, this is really going to solve a problem, I'm going to hike up the price. But I think if you drive from what the customer wants and provide it and look, that can even be, I think that should actually be one of the conversations you have initially. I think if you've got a trusted customer base, it's quite an open conversation to have with them. Look, what are you guys? How are you suffering? What would you what would you budget for this?
Yeah.
Drive that as well. So that's so. One thing I also, sorry, just wanted to come back. It was around 2 months around the discovery, and then defining it was I think you said another 3 months. But from development to the actual delivery date or go live date, I don't. Firstly, what did you refer to that as? Go live or?
Yeah, go live, and we refer to go live, and that's only because our MVP was ready 2 months before our go live.
Right.
Because
2 months. Okay.
So we were looking to go live in July, and but we still hadn't got a bank account, so we couldn't go live. So we built a product. So then we just started working on the next iteration of it, and that's what we ended up launching in September. Because in August we got the bank account, and we were able to. That was the last missing piece. Was getting a bank account that we could put people's funds into. So once we got that sorted, then we were able to go live, and we teed up to go and launch this event. So it was a bit more of a weirder scenario. I think I'm glad we kind of got delayed 2 months, because that MVP was quite rough. I mean, it still would have worked, and it still worked, and it still did what it needed to do. But we were able to give it a bit more polish over the the next 7 or 8 weeks after it.
And how many people were there at that point from when you started on the discovery, which you said it was about 3 people, to when you delivered it? How many people were there involved in this?
So we had 7. So we had four founders. So and then three paid members of staff.
Right. Okay, that's not bad.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the founders did a bulk of the work, which really helped, and everyone had their own sort of area of expertise, which that really helped. I know 4 founders is quite a lot, but we had to cover finance, tech, regulation. There was a lot to cover, so it worked out really well. So 7 of us for the launch.
Right. Okay. And that date, what were you continually like? What was your focus points? Because it's gone live, and what do you do at that point? Is everyone just hands off and watching screens or something like that?
No, it was we reiterated our product very quickly. So we were lucky. We were profitable by December. And maybe profitable I use in a quotation marks, because bear in mind, between September and summer the year after, we never paid a cent to AWS, because we were still falling inside those free AWS credits, which was great, because we could even take that money that we would have paid AWS and hire another engineer. So and that was kind of my philosophy. It's like, we've got some more money, let's hire another engineer. And then at some point we had to get an operations person in, and then we hired our first service desk person. And but from the product point of view, we were like, okay, it's still quite rough what we're doing. We've launched with this broker product. People can buy Bitcoin, and from memory, I think people could buy Litecoin. And then sort of by summer, people could do Litecoin, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, XRP. So we just started launching more trading instruments into our product. And then from there, and then we went on some weird tangents after that. So we built new platforms for just business only. We built OTC platforms. We built. I think within the first 2 years, we built like a proper trading exchange as well. So we were just constantly trying to figure out. We'd bring new products or new platforms to the market and see what worked. Some things failed miserably. Some things worked out really well. Sometimes. But then a lot of the time it was just spawned learnings to figure something else out. And now these days we're, well, we've just launched another new product, but I think we've got quite a flushed out product to where we were sort of 5 years ago.
Yeah. So if you look at it now, then I mean, you're in a good place now. Would you say you do keep an eye on your competition, or I mean, for some people, if they're at that stage, how much time do you still spend with your customer base? Because now you're getting the feedback anyway. Yeah. For new innovation, where does that come from?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because we're in crypto. So crypto is very, I mean, as people may or may not know, it follows very much hype cycles, right? And we're now just hitting what could be another hype cycle. I'm not a financial advisor, but that's what appears to be the case. But when we're at the worst of the hype cycle, that's a really, really good time for us to be looking at what our competitors doing, what's going on. Because if you look at the industry as a whole, the amount of actual code commits that engineers are making to public blockchains when crypto is its worst is going up 20% year on year. So people are building.
Right.
Maybe there is the hype around Bitcoin, but people are building. So, what are they building? What's out there? So it's a really good time to be going out there and having a look, and can we sort of use that to sort of drive innovation for ourselves? When we are in the hype cycles, we don't have time for that sort of thing. It's it's customer feedback, and customer feedback really is our kind of our only, and it's just hold on and scale, because it's very we're never constantly busy. Like we're either at 100%, we're at 5%. It's just the nature of crypto, and there are some big players in the crypto space as well that make the joke that the crypto hype cycle hasn't started until one of them has been knocked offline, and one of them got knocked offline this week. So that's what I say. Maybe the hype cycle's on its way, but yeah. So to your question, I think now it's the feedback that we get. We still take that feedback from the customer. We don't put anywhere near as much time as we used to into that sort of, but also that feedback is condensed now, because we have a full-time service desk team that will take that feedback and do something with it and report on that. So, but it's only only things that are like, oh, this customer didn't like this. So I mean, I guess maybe an example is, there's a big push from the regulator here in the UK around identity verification. And so we have tons of customers that have been with us 4 or 5 years, and we did their identity verification. And obviously we keep doing their identity verification, but it hasn't, we've seen copies of their passport, and we know who they are and things like that. But now the regulators brought out new standards, and even though we've done all these checks, and you need to recheck them. Well, that's a pain to our customers. So we started making a couple of changes to sort of make that experience as nice and as seamless as possible, and then very quickly got some negative feedback from our customers via our support team that it's not happy. So we just reiterated the way we did that, and actually I think that's in a much better place now. But even now we're still learning ways to do that with our customer. It's now that we just hear it louder because we have more customers than maybe when back in the early days. But I still think I really still try to make some time for that where we can. Obviously, it's more of a report from the team as opposed to reading the actual emails, but I think it's still important to take that feedback.
Yeah. And look, I'm conscious of the time now because we kind of really overrun. But one last thing, because we didn't even talk about a few things. Security is a massive part that people look at in public. But I guess we were looking more on a product perspective. But for me, one of the things, and this is where probably I'm a little bit old school, is how do you keep whatever solution you're delivering authentic to the original principles? Because you've always started off with delivering something for the customer with their view in mind. But how do you, because it, like you say, it does take on a different form when it's out there. You've got regulators now forcing you in a certain direction. You can't commit to those original principles. Like you said, you want experience to be good for the customer. keeping going back there, sometimes you kind of realize, you know, I'm losing sight of what we originally started doing here. And this could be even just not a massive product to market, but just even solutions. How do you go back to that principle? And I think I find that challenging. You really got to stick to your principles, and you have to probably compromise your development of that, and and risk, for example, losing a market, for example, or an interest. I think it's very difficult, that part, trying to keep to the principles, and because they maybe change as you go.
No, absolutely. It's a really difficult one. I think a lot of, especially around like the regulatory changes for us, like, the regulator wants this and wants that, and something. I mean, I spent a lot of time with our head of compliance and our head of product, and like, okay, this is what the regulator wants. How does that translate to a customer experience? Because I don't want to tell our customer they need to go and upload 10 documents, and obviously the AI does its thing to check that they're real, and then but it's how can we make that experience better? And a lot of what we try to do now, and I'm quite proud that we do it like this, because I do check this on our competitors' platforms as well, is automate that as much as possible, like and hold my hand. So if I have to do 4 documents, for example, because that's what the regulator says, how can I hold the customer's hands through that, as opposed to just like, send me these? It's okay. It might be easier just to say, send me these, but I could, it's like, hey, we've got a 4-stage process. Send me this document, spinning wheel. Thank you. Turn your camera on. Let's see a selfie. Oh, give me a big smile. Like, there's little things, there's little things that added to like that experience that, okay, it's a pain. No one wants to sit there and smile at us. We've all opened up bank accounts like that where you smile at the web camera on your computer, right? But there's little things you can do to sort of make it a bit more interesting, and just kind of try to soften that experience. So you're still getting what the regulator wants, but you're softening it so it's not as intrusive. So we spend a lot of time, a crazy amount of time, on our onboarding process, and just constantly reiterating that, because that's the point in our journey which is the most cumbersome, from the point of, we're just bombarding you with questions about you. We want to know about you, and even more now since January 5th this year, where we now have to make sure that people are mentally competent to trade crypto, and are you do you know what you're doing? Are you going to lose your life savings? Like, if you tell us that you're going to put 100% of your life savings, we're supposed to cancel your account. Like, it's you're just constantly hitting customers with questions, and it's a but you just got to work really hard to make that as nice as an experience as possible, and really try to handhold and work on that experience with the customer.
Yeah. I've written down here, I've written down a lot of things, and I'm going to kind of bring it to a close, but honesty. Whenever, I'll write messages about what I'm kind of trying to do, often. What am I actually doing now at the moment? What is my, and I often come up, I don't know how to put it in a message, just one word, I'm trying to deliver honest solutions for people. Yeah. It doesn't really work. I've never seen that, but honesty is really key to it. Yeah. And that's in both sides. You're trying to do something for them, but also you are looking at how, honesty for yourself. Say, look, you know what, we really can't do this. It's not going to work like this. So I think honesty is a key word there. And also one of the other ones is compromise. But look, I think to kind of summarize what we've spoken about today, and like I said, we've missed probably a load of things because it was really interesting. Was to take we looked at the idea, the initial phase. It was a pub in Camden for you, and you looked at that idea and just drew it out. That discovery phase, and how looking at surveys, talking to your community is really important, to seeing how who are you actually solving a problem? Is it only for 10 people? Is it, you know, for 100 people? That's really key to take you to the next part. Defining, I suppose, what your product is, and not just defining, you know, the capabilities, but I think the market part is important. Like you said, who is it actually for, and, you know, what is that market? It might not just be I don't know, the financials. Maybe break it down into what financials. Is it, you know, subscriber based, financial, consumer based? So really look at that. So break it down a bit more granularly, and then you know, the delivery. That's a whole experience in itself. And I mean, you don't have to do this, but at that stage, you're looking at maybe compromising on a bit, and then for me, keeping back. Going to your original principles, seeing if, you know, you're keeping it real, and you know, I'm going to say it again, but honesty for the solution, I think, is important. I think that's what I took from this, and I think you guys have done really well. I mean, it was really interesting. Thanks for joining this. I know you.
My pleasure.
But we should do another one of these. I think it was useful. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I've enjoyed the questions. It's been a good morning.